Hello, everybody. Welcome to our open water safety webinar. My name is William Kuhn. I'm the Vice Chair of the California Water Safety Coalition. We're going to go ahead and wait a minute or two as people continue to trickle in. In the meantime, would love to have you introduce yourself in the chat. So if you can open up that chat box and tell us your name, where you're from, and what organization you're with, that would be great. I see several folks jumping in. Jen Rubin from Sacramento, thanks for joining. Ian Grant from South Australia has joined us. It's early for him. Great to see Sean Slevin from New York, Steve from Sacramento, Vivian Stansel, welcome. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to have you here. Please go ahead and type your name in the chat and where you're from. Hi, Fiona, welcome. Glad to have you here. And we will get going here just in a minute. Great. Hi, Maggie. Welcome from San Dimas. Tony from the city of Santa Barbara. Nice to have you join us. We've got John from Ventura, also Walter from the city of LA. It's great to have everybody here. Thank you for joining. Great. All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started now. I'd like to start by just saying Leslie Schween from the Huntington Beach Marine Safety Department was supposed to moderate this webinar today, but her and her department are actually in Colorado receiving the 2023 Community Lifesaver of the Year Award. So she couldn't make it, but we're super stoked for the Huntington Beach lifeguards who received this award. Just by way of some housekeeping notes, you are in a webinar, so your mic has been turned off, your camera has been turned off. The chat is the best way for you to engage today. We are going to be posting links in the chat, so as our presenters kind of share some information, we are going to drop some links into the chat where you can go ahead and access some stuff. We're recording this presentation and we will put the webinar up on the website a little bit later. And Katie has just dropped the link in where all of the recordings from the past webinars can also be accessed. Just want to remind everybody that the 2023 California Water Safety Summit is coming up April 25th and 26th in San Diego. The California Water Safety Coalition is co-hosting this event with the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego. It's going to be a really great event. Registration is open. However, early bird registration closes tomorrow, Friday. Early bird registration is only $100. Would love to see everybody there. We've got a great lineup of presenters slated. Okay, now moving on to our discussion topic of the day, open water. So I am going to start off by presenting a little bit of information on open water drowning in California. I'm going to present some data and some statistics just to frame the conversation. Then we're going to hear from Ryan from the National Weather Service. From Eureka, we're going to hear from Melissa and Sarah from the Boating Outreach and Education Unit with State Parks, and then Pono Barnes from LA County, who's going to talk a little bit about some technology in ocean lifeguarding. Okay, the data that I'm going to present to you now in the next kind of 8 minutes is deaths only, but it's really important for me to note that death is only the tip of the iceberg when we talk about drowning, right? Non-fatal drowning is a massive issue in the state. People can drown and have lifelong disabilities, and there's some really powerful families in our state that have been very active and have had an immense influence on state policy and drowning prevention, and their children have drowned and lived. So just want to clarify that everything I'm about to present is death only, and you just need to have in your mind that the non-fatal burden of drowning is much larger. Okay, quickly, I'm going to show data from 2005 to 2019. Again, this is death only. The statistics that I'm showing is all causes. So we're including intentional, unintentional, and undetermined. Normally, drowning kind of circles really focus on unintentional drowning, but that massively undercuts the problem, and it really limits the view of the issue in the state. The other thing is that the data that I'm going to present is any case with a drowning is counted. So normally, the easiest way to go about it is to say if drowning is the primary cause, we count it. But what about a person who has a heart attack while they're surfing and then they drown? If that person had a heart attack and they're on their sofa, they may have lived. So this data includes all drowning cases from all scenarios all across the state. And the total number of deaths 2005 to 2019 is 9,237. Okay, when you break down the body of water of where people drown, there's a bit of a challenge when we talk about open water. So the International Classification of Disease coding has, when someone dies, you give them a code of what happens to them. And there's a couple different codes. One's related to pools, one's related to bathtubs, and then all of the open water section is just linked into one. So it's all called natural water, and it doesn't break it out by ocean, river, lake, pond, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a massive problem because you will all know that river drowning in Northern California is a very different situation than a canal drowning in the central part of the state, or a beach drowning in Southern California or something like that. So in this project, we actually went a little bit deeper and we read there's a open text box part of the death certificate. And so we read thousands and thousands of places where the coroner had written stuff in to determine what body of water people had died in. And that's what this looks like. So about 22% of the drowning deaths in California occur in rivers, 10% in ponds, and 20% in coastal spaces. And I will note that we've included large bays like San Diego and like the Bay Area as part of coastal spaces as well. One of the things that really stuck out to me as kind of a data nerd on this was just how big the river and canal problem is in the state. And this is an area that has traditionally, we haven't really been talking about in the drowning prevention community. Okay. This is California drowning deaths broken down by sex. So just first of all, men drown way more than women. But when you look at each of those groups, women tend to drown in other bodies of water like pools, spas, bathtubs. Men are drowning more in open water. This is a graph on age. So you have age on the bottom. The orange line is pools, spas, and kind of other bodies of water, and the green line is open water. And I'd like to draw your attention to the left side of the graph first. And if you look at 0 to age 25, you see this X. There's been some really fantastic work done by Dana Gage and the LV project on what she calls the X effect. And this is the idea that children tend to drown in pools, and everybody else, once people reach a certain age, they tend to drown in open water. We train kids to teach in pools, but then, they have this open water risk for the rest of their lives. So I'd like you to think a little bit about the demographics of who's drowning in open water in the state. And so that's the left side of the graph. And the interesting part about this is actually what happens in the older populations as well, right? So the drowning rate in California for those over 75 is really high. It's about the same as 0 to 4. And so you can see that, young kids drown in pools, and then older people are drowning in pools. And then there's the opposite effect for open water. This is the same graph, age groups along the bottom. And now we've broken it out a little bit further by body of water. And I'd just like to draw attention to this light blue line. The burden of river deaths in young adults, in older teenagers and young adults, is pretty profound. And this is I think this is a really important area for the drowning prevention community to dig into a little bit and figure out what's going on. This is drowning deaths by body of water and race and ethnicity. And so you can see pools and this is proportion, right? So the proportion of white drowning deaths is everything in the column will add up to 100. Okay. So pools, dominate most groups. Rivers are high, very high in the American Indian and Alaska Native population. Coastal spaces for Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. The river drowning burden is the highest burden or highest site for Hispanic people in California. This is by month, all right? So months on the bottom, and this shouldn't be a massive surprise to anybody. We see this massive spike across the board. But what's interesting to me is the bodies of water that don't have a summer spike. So unknown, yeah, and unknown and other, that's fine. I mean, there's lots of, variation in the data there. Bathtubs in purple along the bottom, that makes sense, right? Kids mainly bathe all year long. But then look at the coastal line. So this dark blue coastal line doesn't really have the summer spike that pools, lakes, and rivers do, which is an interesting kind of consideration when you think about coastal drowning in the state, and how this really is a year-round issue. Okay, gonna quickly breeze through some regional variation. We've done this analysis based on the California census regions. There's a load of different ways to break up the state, and everyone has their kind of pros and cons. This is the one that we're going with. So if you can take a look at this map, try and identify where you are on the map, and then we'll have a look. So this is basically north to south, left to right. So North Coast on the far left, San Diego Imperial County is on the far right. Open water is represents the majority of drowning sites in every region except LA, Inland Empire, and Orange County, right? So loads of pools in these counties, but pretty much everywhere else, it's an open water site. Now we'll go one more and we'll get a more detailed look at the bodies of water. So again, rivers, very surprising here, as a Southern California person. North Coast, 33% of the drowning deaths in the North Coast are occurring in rivers. Same thing in Superior, California, over 40% of the drowning deaths happening in rivers. And you can see kind of the other variation here. Again, pools just dominating the Inland Empire, Orange County, and LA. And you've also got Orange County here and San Diego Imperial County. One thing to note here, the river deaths in the San Diego Imperial County region are there's a large proportion of these river canal deaths that are actually occurring in the American Canal and Calexico as people try and cross the border. And so those deaths are counted in our statistics. And that's why the river canal drowning deaths in San Diego Imperial are elevated. Okay, here's my last slide, and let me just walk you through this. The numbers that you see in the region is the percent of drowning deaths of visitors. Okay, so we'll just take this one on the left coast, or the left side here. 43% of the drowning deaths that happen in open water on the North Coast, those people live in other regions of the state, other states, or other countries. So the kind of take-home message here is that the percentage of visitors who drown in open water is much, much higher than pools and other bodies of water. So you look at, as a comparison, 9% and 13% LA County and Orange County, people drowning in pools and other bodies of water are from another area. 31% and 41% of people that drown in LA and Orange County in open water are not from the area. So this is a really kind of important challenge for us as we think about the hazards in each of our local contexts, the people that are visiting, the education and outreach that we do. You can do loads of education to, your local community, and that's really important, but we also really need to think about our visitors as well. Just wrapping up here, I've got 3 take-home messages for you. First, across the board, open water has a very distinct trend and pattern compared to pool and other, bodies of water. And that's really important to kind of remember as we think about the big tent of drowning prevention and the big tent of water safety in the state. our prevention interventions and efforts will get more effective if we start to customize for the different situations that we have. Number two, there's really big variation across the state. So the open water drowning burden in Orange County is very different than the open water drowning burden in Superior, California. And I'm talking Redding, north of Sacramento, and even in the Central Valley, right? Like there's just lots of different variation as you move across the state. And then the third one is, again, as a data person, I look at this and there's just like 100 more questions that come up. Why are rivers, so prominent in Northern California? Why are Hispanic people drowning in rivers more than other places? What is, the differences in sex or age? I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. And so as a researcher, this is kind of my call for just, more detailed analysis. Okay. I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm really happy and honored to welcome Ryan Elward from Eureka and the National Weather Service to join us. And Ryan, it's so great to have you. And I know I've said this a bunch to you, but it's awesome to have some true north perspective here. Oftentimes our drowning prevention conversations in the state are really dominated by the Southern California crowd, and we've done I think a decent job of looping in some Inland Empire and some Central California and some Sacramento, but getting the perspective from Eureka, Humboldt, Del Norte is really important. And so really looking forward to your presentation on open water hazards up in Northern California. Thank you so much. You can share your screen and take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Will. Just do that share screen thing here and start from the beginning. Please let me know if you're seeing my slide.
Yep, all good.
Excellent, great. Okay, so yeah, my name's Ryan Elward. I'm the warning coordination meteorologist here at the National Weather Service office in Eureka, and I think Will set this up really well. Our hazard here is very different from the LA area, for instance. We don't have lots of pools. It's not sunny and warm here on the coast, so it's a very different environment, and so people seem to get caught off guard by other hazards, specifically beach hazards and the river here. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit. 15 minutes, I'll do as much as I can cover here in that much time frame. But so with the Weather Service, we're trying to build a weather-ready nation, and that goes for big storms like we had just a few weeks ago that caused flooding across the state. But also, that there are other hazards that they're not specifically directly weather at the moment, but they are caused by weather. I mean, the reason we have rivers flowing is because we've had snow melt or whatever. The reason we have sneaker waves on the coast is because big storms across the ocean. So we try to also prepare people for those hazards as well. Around here, sneaker waves are the biggest thing. I'm sure many people have heard the term, but if you're in Southern California, it's not a hazard. This really changes as you get to about San Francisco Bay, maybe Monterey, and then north up through the Pacific Northwest. Sneaker waves are waves that just kind of sneak up on you. You go to the beach, you think it's okay, you think it's safe, and then as it turns out, it's not safe. And we've gotten to the point now where it used to be, oh man, we can't forecast this, but we actually have a way to do it, which is watching for long period waves that hit the coast. Waves that are set up into sets that might last maybe 20 seconds between waves. They often then result in this setup where we can have sneaker waves. So we have two basic environments here, wave environments. Well, three. One is there's no hazard, right? The second one is this. We have lots of big waves, lots of different size waves, totally different waves coming from different directions. And if you go to the beach and you see this, large waves breaking on the jetty, it just looks chaotic. I'm going to guess that you're going to look at that and say, I'm not going to go out there. It's just a natural warning. People stay back. We add in that, in all of our messaging for high surf advisories, stay off of rocks, stay off of jetties, stay back from the surf. But people just tend to do that in general because of when you go to the beach and you see that, you're not going to go out there. The second hazard is a sneaker wave day. This might be the beach that you arrived to that morning. The waves look small, doesn't really seem like a big deal. You can get caught off guard and start to move closer to the surf because it just doesn't feel like something that I need to be worried about. and then a large set arrives and catches you off guard and knocks you into the surf. That's the main threat that we have here. So I'm going to show one video here. Hopefully you can see this. Hopefully it's playing nicely and smooth for you. When you have a whole bunch of different waves in the environment, you get that chaotic environment. But if you have one long period wave, something that's like 20 seconds, but you always then have smaller deviations from that. There might be 20.2 seconds, 21 seconds, 21 and a half seconds. They're all different waves that are moving through the environment. Eventually, this is a very simplified model, but those waves are going to line up and you're going to get a bigger set that arrives suddenly. For a beach goer, this can seem like the wave came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you're having large waves hit the surf, you get caught off guard, you get knocked into the surf, and then the waves just go away again. And these long periods between waves can last for 5 to 10 minutes, or even up to 20. And so if you come right at the beginning of that 20-minute period, you might think you can go right up to the surf when you actually can't. So let me jump back into my PowerPoint. Make sure I got the right slide here from current slide. Okay, so we have these two different environments, the setup that results in a natural warning and then the one that can catch you off guard. And so to get into the details here, this is a very simplified model of the way that things happen. People arrive right about here. They look at the waves. They say, oh, I can go way down. I can get down close to the surf. So over the course of that 15 minutes, they might slowly, progressively get closer to the waves. We hear from people that they're at a perceived distance. They feel like they were safe. They were far from the ocean. The problem is they really weren't, and they just don't realize it at the time. It feels safe if you don't know the environment. Then they start to get distracted. They get onto their cell phone. Around here, a lot of people search for agates. So they'll go down, they'll put their head in the sand essentially to start digging for those agates, and they're not looking at the waves. It's an easy way to get caught off guard. And then the big wave hits without warning. And if you don't really understand the wave environment here, I don't know if you've ever watched a surfer out at the surf. They sit up on a high point and they watch the waves for like 20 minutes to see where these big sets are happening. But for most beachgoers, we don't do that. So then it feels like the wave hit without warning. It's that perceived safety. These waves can wash way up the beach, 160 feet or more. It really depends on the slope of the beach. A steeper beach, the waves may not wash up as far, but they do. But that steep beach can cause you to get washed into the surf more quickly. Add in, it's usually a sunny day. More people are at the surf. Why is it a sunny day? Because there's none of those local waves. Well, if there's none of those local waves, we don't have a local storm. These are all waves happening from a storm that developed way across on the other side of the Pacific. The waves are moving across the ocean and hitting our coast. That's when we get the long period waves here. Once people are washed into the surf, it's 55 degrees. It's too cold. You don't even get to hypothermia. You start to lose feeling in your arms, your legs. If you've ever been in a cold pool or whatever, you've experienced this. And once you're in the surf and you're getting battered by the surf with cold water, survival is very unlikely. And that's why you see our numbers here are very high for open water deaths. And I have videos that will get shared. One is about 48 seconds, the other one's about 4 minutes that demonstrate this exact effect happening on one of our beaches here. We just let it run. We let a video run for 37 minutes. Yeah, really, it was about 2 hours, but we got the period when the waves hit a log there, where you can literally see people move down to the surf. The big wave comes in and they run away. It really demonstrates how this can happen. So around here, we try to use multi-hazard signs to try to give people all the hazards that are at the beach, all in one specific location as you enter the beach access point. And these signs can have 3 to 5 different hazards on it, and they're specific to the beach that you arrive at. So you don't see something that isn't a hazard there. If there are no rocks and jetties, you're not going to see this on the sign. If there are cliff faces, you're going to see that replaced on the sign. There's only 3 hazards: tsunami, always here, sneaker waves, and rip currents. That's all you'll see on the sign. And these are now consistently done up and down the coast, from Del Norte County down through Mendocino County, and a few places down in the Bay Area as well are now using this sign. And it's a great way to, when you arrive at the beach, you see the exact same thing. You're not littered with multiple signs across the beach, so you're not constantly just saying, oh, that's another sign and moving on. You get a consistent message. And so this has been really critical to trying to get that message out to people. And again, this is one of our posts that we put on social media to try to explain this. The swim failure issue is that, within 20 minutes, your arms aren't moving. You might not be able to kick with your legs anymore. So if you survive through the cold shock issue, you're probably not going to get through the swim failure. It's very rare that somebody survives for longer than 20 minutes in our waters, unless they're just somebody that swims in the water regularly and they've gotten used to it. You really need a wetsuit or a life jacket to survive in the water here. And then, so I wanted to also show one more thing. The other issue that we have here are the beaches are definitely not a place that, they're very cold. They're a great place to go with your dog. Sorry, they're a great place to go with your dog, but they're not a good place to then try to dive into the ocean to try to save your dog. So we did create a 30-second PSA. And that video has been shared on TV here locally for the channels that were able to play it. And then, of course, social media, trying to get the message out that we've had multiple people try to go in to save a dog when the dog got out on its own, and they did not. And it's all about that cold water here locally. And that same rule then goes to the rivers. The rivers here are swift in the springs. One of the social media posts that the Sacramento Weather Office shared with us that we've been sharing in the past. And it just goes into the importance of wearing a life vest if you're going to be out there, being very careful, keeping a close eye on children. Really don't even let them get in the water, especially if it's something swift like this. That's just not okay. But there are some swimming holes where it is possible to swim. But regularly people they just don't perceive how cold the water is, just like with our oceans. You expect it to be nice and warm in a hot spring day when it's suddenly 85 degrees out there. You touch the water and you find out, no, it's really like 50 degrees or colder. And so just trying to swim across even a place where the water is not swift at all can be really difficult, and drownings have happened. Plus you can be caught by things that are underneath the water and so forth. So we have a lot of messaging that goes out about river safety and how to stay safe here, specifically trying to get to the local university, Cal Poly Humboldt, to let the students know, the people that are here visiting, that are now here at school, that came from LA, that don't really know the hazards here, try to get them the message that this is really a hazard. And just recently we added this new poster up on with the different river sites here on the Trinity. The Trinity River happens to be our biggest problem locally. The most drowning deaths happen on the Trinity from the issue of the cold water and the swiftness of the current. And so we worked with a local graphic artist to create this poster that is now up throughout that region, and worked with the local jurisdictions there, the Hoopa Tribe, the Humboldt County OES, and then also the Willow Creek Community Service District, to get these signs up, to try to at least catch someone's eye with something that's a little different, not just the standard dangerous sign. It's just something that's different that hopefully we're hoping will catch people and make them think twice about getting into the river without being prepared. And then last, this is a whole region approach here. We work together to create consistent messaging. And other agency examples, I just want to make sure it's known that, like Del Norte County Schools, they have 5th grade Water Safety Day. They talk about all sorts of water hazards specific to open water and the beach and the rivers. And we're there to present during that as well. California State Parks has the awesome junior lifeguard program that they expanded to this area several years ago. That may be mentioned in the next presentation, but it's really great. And we've worked with, they've been on the Water Safety Coalition and working with us, allowing us to present at that as well. And then the Mendocino County Water Safety Coalition has brochures up and down the coast that they go out and they restock every day to make sure that visitors can get that information and know the hazards along that coastline. It's really has been abalone divers. We don't have abalone divers really anymore because you can't fish them anymore. But if that ever comes back, that has been the biggest that diving activity has caused the most drownings in the Mendocino County area by far. Yeah, and that's what I have for today. And I'll be happy to answer questions later because I'm already at my 15 limit.
Amazing. Ryan, thank you so much for just for providing us a quick introduction. And you can stop sharing your screen. Perfect. You've outlined a bunch of stuff that's very different, right, from other parts of the state. The sneaker wave issue is really interesting, and I find a very fascinating education challenge. Right, and you mentioned it, like people show up to the beach and it looks one way for 20 minutes and then it looks completely different in a little bit. You also talked about cold water and some of the difficulty with signage, and you said trying to get a consistent message on the sign where when somebody walks from the parking lot to the beach, they're not just seeing this huge laundry list of like signage stuff and they go, oh, whatever, more signs. And that's a huge challenge in the beach safety space and in other open water spaces, is how do we make our signs more effective? If you have questions for Ryan, it'd be great if you could drop them in the chat. He can respond in the chat too as we move on to our next presentation. I also do just I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a phenomenal book on the Sonoma Coast lifeguards and the lifeguard program that was started there. It's very, very different than any other sort of lifeguarding probably on the planet. And that book does a great job of talking about the complexities of the issue in the region. So Ryan, thanks so much for joining. Next up, I am really honored to welcome Melissa Miranda and Sarah Kennedy from the Boating Outreach and Education Unit with California State Parks. And they are going to give us a little bit of an update on the Division of Boating and Waterways and some life jacket and boating outreach and education. So Sarah and Melissa, welcome, and you guys can share a screen and take it away.
All right. Good morning, or good afternoon, sorry. And I just practiced sharing my screen and I did it wrong this time. We've been on Zoom for how many years now? But hi, everybody. I am Melissa Miranda with California State Parks and the Boating Education Outreach Manager. And today I have with me my colleague, Sarah Kennedy, and she's our Boating Education Outreach Coordinator. And we have some information for you today, mostly on, we're going to be sharing about open water, drowning information and prevention. So there's great information from Ryan on the previous presentation. I don't want to disappoint because he mentioned we might be presenting on the junior lifeguard program, but not today. But Sarah is awesome and can definitely connect this coalition with information about this awesome program if you guys are interested. But today we'd love to share with you some of the ways that we are engaging with boaters throughout California. And we'd also like to share some ways that you can get involved with helping spread the love. So our statistics are directly related to boating. So these incidents all originated from a boat and represent some of those statistics for open water drownings that you heard earlier from Will. So our statistics right now that we're able to release are from 2019. And in 2019, there were 450 boating accidents and 41 fatalities in California. So drowning is listed as a cause for 17 of those fatalities. And then where life jacket use was known, 82% of boating accident victims who drowned were not wearing a life jacket. So their lives could have potentially been saved had they simply been wearing a life jacket. And like Ryan just said, your best defense is having a life jacket on. So you may have seen our billboards, heard some of our radio advertisements, or maybe been served one of our digital ads on social media or somewhere on the internet, because we follow you around. So these are just a few of the ways that we're connecting with the millions of Californians who recreate on our beautiful waterways. So pictured here is an example of one of our marina posters that we have Obviously, this one would be directed on lakes, but we have ones that are specific to coastal, and then we also have some that are related to our California Boater Card program. So we have these at over 225 waterfront locations throughout the state. So if you'd like to request a poster, if you know of a location that would be a great place to hit somebody right before they head out on the water, please shoot me an email, and we can definitely get that resource to any location needed. I'm going to turn it over now to Sarah. She can talk about our life jacket loan stations and some other programs that we have.
Thank you, Melissa. So life jacket loan stations, some of you may already be familiar with our programs, and some of you, this might be something new. We currently help provide resources, including life jackets and signage, to more than 115 life jacket loaner stations throughout the state of California. We are proud to partner with safety partners such as marinas, fire departments, California state parks, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Each life jacket loaner station is operated by independent partner organizations who ensure they are stocked with life jackets and they are in serviceable conditions. Our branded signage is double-sided with messaging with one side on English and the other side, which you can see here, in Spanish. And the goal of this program is to provide access to life jackets and to ensure a safe time out on the water for all. In 2022, we added 5 new life jacket loaner stations, which include Lake Paris State Recreation Area, City of Lodi, South Yuba River State Recreation Area, and Silverwood State Recreation Area. And we hope to keep adding to our list of loan stations to expand access to these life-saving resources. And Melissa, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So if you're a public safety agency or someone who would like to help start a new life jacket loan station near you, we have the resources for you to do that. There are many different types of life jacket loan stations, such as the one pictured, and we can provide all of the equipment that you see here to make a standalone life jacket loan station. You can also have one at a checkout system at a kiosk, office, or fire station, or even place them on lifeguard towers like Millerton Lake does. And they actually have their lifeguards fit the life jackets on the users. We are currently working on revamping our website, but we are working on a mapping system so that users can easily find all the life jacket loan stations near them on their phone using our Boat California app. If you're looking to start a life jacket loan station, please determine the location and on-site logistics and contact me for resources. Melissa, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We have been working on new innovative ways to connect with the boating community to help educate boaters on boater safety. Through social media, we have been working on safety videos with California State Park lifeguards with basic boating tips such as learning to anchor. As many lifeguards and public safety out there know, many boats come ashore along the coast, and we're working to help educate boaters on how to operate safely along the coastline, as well as in lakes, rivers, and reservoirs. Last year, we've also partnered with the California Coastal Commission and the San Francisco Estuary Partnership to create an educational podcast called Dockside, which focuses on how to save and enjoy the waters we love by sharing clean and safe boating practices. The boating safety team has been responsible for 2 to 3 episodes per year. Last year, we interviewed 2 retired California State Park lifeguard chiefs, Mike Broussard and Mike Martino, about their experience as surf watch boat operators. This year, our first interview will be with Captain Marie Rogers, a leader in the women's sailing in the Black community. Our second episode will focus on paddle sports. Considering this year is going to be a big whitewater year, we'll focus on river and whitewater paddle sports. And we'll be interviewing Trevor Croft of Rafting Magazine and members of CAL FIRE's Swift Water Rescue Team. And then for hopefully our third episode, we'll be interviewing Captain Liz Clark, who is an author of the book Swell, about her adventures of sailing alone as a woman. And with these interviews, we're hoping to open the door to a safer and more diverse boating community. So be sure to check out our podcast, Dockside. Circling back to the river desk that Will was talking about earlier, we'll be focusing a lot on river safety video messaging this year, working with Swiftwater rescue teams and Rafting Magazine up on the American River. So if you're a public safety agency and you're looking to collaborate with us, we would love to work with you and highlight your agency and specific safety tips for your area. So make sure to shoot me an email and that'll be shown at the end of the presentation. And back to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Sarah. So that was a lot of great information that Sarah just shared. And we also want to invite you to connect with us on our social sites. So you can see outside of the California State Parks social media sites, we have a Boat California page on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and a few things on YouTube as well. But those are our main avenues where we engage with the public on social. And you can also visit our boatcalifornia.com website that has pretty much all the information that we covered today. And I also want to direct you guys to our California Boater Card program. I didn't do a slide on that, but as Sarah was talking, I was like, well, you guys probably would be interested in our California Boater Card program, which is the mandatory boater education. So it's been proven that states that have some form of mandatory boater education, that helps reduce some of the accidents in the states. And so we've been implementing our mandatory boater education program since 2018. And so we're in our 5th year of the phase-in process, 5th or 6th year. But this year, so starting January 1st this year, it's 50 and younger are required to be carrying a California Boater Card when operating a motorized vessel on California waterways. And so the intent of the program is to get boaters an introductory level education to boating safety. And the card is basically your proof that you've taken a safe boating course. And we actually worked really hard this last year to translate our course into Spanish, and we are proud to offer the very first approved course in Spanish. And it's one of the ways that we're helping increase our access to, our diverse Californians. At this point, we're just in Spanish, and we're looking to eventually be able to translate into other languages as well. But we do offer that, and all that information can be found on our website. So that is
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Sarah, Melissa, thank you so much. You guys just went through a load of information very quickly. Would you both copy the links to your emails and put them in the chat? Because I think there are folks that would be interested in reaching out. Oh, look, boom. It's already there. Katie, you're a rock star. So I've got a load of questions. Just one really quick from Amy. Can another state steal or use the tagline, "Save the ones you love"? Are you okay if people borrow that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've shared it, we've not necessarily shared the tagline, but the heart with this heart logo. So just really fast, our campaign statistics showed that boaters are very motivated for behavior change with our current campaign. So yes, absolutely, we'd love to share. Speaking on the love theme, it's Valentine's Day week, right? Yeah. But no, we would love to share anything that we can, and we have a whole advertising agency that can provide whatever creative information that you need.
Awesome. Second question really quick. Sarah, you were talking about the life jacket loaner stations. Are these mostly at boat ramps for use for people on boats, kayaks? Is it for swimmers, suppers, all of the above?
Yeah, I mean, they can really be placed anywhere where there is any type of boat, which includes paddle sports and kayaks, stand-up paddlers. So it can be placed at a marina, it could be placed at an open water at lake or river put-ins, and there's also loan stations at fire stations and businesses near marinas. So really, you can do anything with it. If you want a loaner station, we can help provide that for you guys.
Awesome. Okay.
Can I piggyback off that really fast? Just so the group knows, our funding comes from, or part of it comes from the Coast Guard, and then also from our Harbors and Watercraft Revolving Fund. So that's boater funds. So we want to make sure there's some type of boating, but also whatever the intended purpose is, we'd also like, anybody that needs access to a life jacket to be able to have one.
Okay, awesome. Melissa, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing the awesome work that you guys are doing. And you heard it here. It's going to be a big whitewater year. Everybody should be thinking about and preparing for high rivers, and again, bringing it back to this river conversation that I think needs to be elevated a little bit. Thank you both so much for sharing. I'm going to ask you guys to politely turn your cameras off, and then I will welcome Pono Barnes from the Los Angeles County Fire Department Marine Safety Division. Welcome, Pono. Thank you so much for joining us. Pono is going to share a little bit about some of the work that's going on relevant to technology and life-saving in broader open water spaces. So take it away, Pono.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. So yeah, we're talking technology in the towers. Let me get this shared for you. All right, we looking good?
Yep, looks good.
All right, cool. So yeah, my name is Keoli'i Noho Pono Barnes, Pono Barnes for short. I'm a captain ocean lifeguard for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. Started my career lifeguarding back in 2008, was promoted full-time in 2017, and just this summer I became a captain. So I've been really involved with our training section and pushing the profession of lifeguarding in that realm. And so that's what I was doing primarily as a specialist. And then I got sucked back into the vortex that is admin and training at our department. And I'm now our administrative captain. So I'm overseeing a bunch of little bit of everything, and not what you think when you think of lifeguarding, but part of my job now is going to be onboarding some of the new tech and new ideas that float across people's or float across my desk and out of people's heads. So technology in the tower, what does that look like? It's primarily been a major sticking point in the old guard of lifeguarding. And I think when people think technology, they're looking at robots taking over their jobs and drones with life rings and whatever this thing is with a megaphone on it. But that's not really what I'm talking about today. And you can see in the lower right-hand side, that is the Emily rescue ring that we had, I don't want to say pioneered, but we had tested out a number of years ago. So yeah, it's been this taboo topic, and I can agree with most people that it's definitely not this. It's not going to be, at least in the near future, drones and people dropping life rings, and us with remote controllers in our hands in the towers. But I'm talking about the smaller pain points in tech that we don't really consider tech, that can better assist us and augment our current operations. And so the first thing that came to mind for the Los Angeles County Lifeguards was our communications in the tower. So our VHF and UHF radios are fine for our permanent lifeguards and captains, but on the tower level, this is the primary mode of communication for the recurrent ocean lifeguard here in Los Angeles. So there's 158 towers, and they all have these old brown phones. When you actually Google this brown push dial phone, it pops up and it corrects it, and it says vintage brown dial phone. And so this tech was tech at some point. It was old, reliable, and it worked really well for a number of years. But we rested and on this, and it became kind of a burden in the last couple of years. Some of those pain points for us were we had a ton of phone line that needed to be strung. So in the northern sections of LA County, we strung these aerial phone lines. Each one of our towers, 158 of them, either had aerial phone line or trenched phone line. With the ones that had aerial phone line had 4 to 5 creosote soaked telephone poles that we had to erect along the back of the beach. We're putting our personnel on top of towers like this, putting big telephone poles on top of our trucks and damaging our trucks, and putting our employees in very likely areas for injury. A lot of time was spent maintaining these lines, and a lot less watching the water in some cases. So in addition to stringing lines, we were digging 6-foot deep trenches at the back of the beach where the dead men were, to get the lines out to the towers. And then the beach rakes would come and cut the line, and all that time spent was for naught. And we go dig up the trenches again and start over. Very time intensive, not costly initially, but on the back end, as the systems, as phone systems evolved, it got harder and harder to find this type of telephone, aerial telephone line, and underground line as well. In addition to just the logistics of getting the equipment up in the air or down in the ground, we had a whole lot of confusing whose fault is it when the phones went down. So in this diagram, in a 5-part training series that we had to produce, this was the diagram to show our personnel how to troubleshoot a down phone line. So the red line was something that we could handle. The blue little dash is the dead man, where then the line would be strung back to the demarc. And so anything in green was part of our internal services department, a completely different department here in LA County that handles this type of thing. And then if it wasn't there, after number of emails and coordination with personnel, we then finally called the telephone company to help untangle the big rat's nest of copper cable that was in the headquarters to figure out what went wrong. And so it worked great at some point, and then it became very difficult. The phones themselves are old tech, and we just stayed static on it too long. And so there was always the idea of, hey, what if we just went to cell phones? And so the first knee-jerk reaction is, an iPhone is going to cost you $1,200, and we got 158 towers times $1,200. It just doesn't make sense. And so it was never really brought up until finally the phone system that we were on, the PBX system that we used, the people that were repairing it could no longer find parts and pieces for it. They were on eBay trying to win bids for these special cards that went in these big boxes that were mounted all over up and down our division. And so we finally said, hey, we need to take a look and see what kind of options are there. Are we going radio? Are we in every tower, or cell? And we finally landed on iPhones. So at first glance, looks like it's going to cost a lot of money. Is it even going to work? We have varying geographic barriers up and down our coastline. We got 72 miles of coast, including Catalina Island. Does a cell phone work in Zuma, Manhattan, Cabrillo, and Catalina all the same? And then how do we even manage all those telephones? We were on a 4-digit internal extension system that worked really well, but then how do we manage 158 different phone numbers? And then also just the first knee-jerk thing as probably a lifeguard manager or a chief would think is, more importantly, how am I going to keep all of my recurrent lifeguards off that phone and not watching the current WSL contest? And how do we keep these things updated? And so we really dove into this, and we had a lot of support from our internal management, our information management division, so like the IT division of the fire department, and then that ISD, our internal services department for Los Angeles County. We had a pretty large working group, and we sat down and just looked at the numbers. And so for our brown phones that we call them the brown phones, the brown phone cost us $240,000 a year in just service, just to get the phone to ring, and then maintenance to keep those telephone lines going was anywhere from $75,000 to about $100,000 a year, and that includes the lines themselves, the contracts with the service vendors, and getting the lines to the beaches, in the ground, or up in the air. And then the phones themselves, after a certain point, I think the latest Google search I did on them, there's some of these phones are going for $170 because they've now reached vintage status, but they're about $50 each. It wasn't very scalable. If we needed to add an additional line, additional lines actually meant new cable drops, and so we would have to go contract with the vendor and get hardware quotes and have service agreements to make that happen. Our network was quite literally a network of either trenched or strung copper line, and then compatibility. Our administrative sites and our department as wide is moving to voice over IP telephones, and so the internet phone to PBX phone connection just it didn't work, or it was not possible. And then as far as features goes for these phones, we had call waiting and the ability to break in on call. So you pretty much just got a roadside telephone for the most part. And then tower moves were an absolute nightmare. So every year we move each one of those 158 towers at least twice, and sometimes even more. And so that involved pulling down those lines off those telephone poles, DCing all the connections, wrapping up all the cable, losing all your trenches, and pulling the towers back, and then doing it all again in the spring and summertime. And then with large surf events, it could be up to 3 or 4 times depending on the year. And so it got very labor intensive, and it was clear to us that we needed to figure out if the cell phone project was going to be a reality. So we did it. The last 1.5 years, we brought iPhones into the towers. It was actually a huge cost savings as far as service went. The per phone bill per month was $8,000, with the option to, during the winter months, put towers that we don't traditionally open into like a hibernation mode, and would bring our monthly cost down to $5,000. So overall cost is about $69,000 a year in just service. And then maintenance, very little maintenance so far on the phones, about $1,000-ish a year on charging cables and batteries. Each one of the towers comes with one of these rechargeable battery banks, and we were able to find a solution to keep the phones charged all day, and then charge if they were used up on like off cycles during the middle of the day. Hardware costs was the most surprising thing. These are all refurbished iPhones, and they only cost us $1, which was like absolutely crazy to me at the moment, but I'm very thankful that that's the way it turned out. And then scalability was it's infinite. We can add phones, add lines whenever we want, and every single one of the devices is managed remotely. With the old system, anytime a phone went down, you'd have to call a tech to come out physically and manage the device. This can all be done remotely from our information management division out in Commerce. And then our network, all of our phones are primarily working off the AT&T FirstNet network. So if during the summer months when Zuma has peak activity and the cell network is stressed, we're actually on a higher band, and our communications are relatively solid. And then more recently, our newer vehicles have an AT&T and Verizon cradle point, which switches back and forth between both services. And as the truck drives down the beach, it's broadcasting a network. And all these phones can connect to that with FirstNet's down or not performing at the speed we need. And then compatibility, AT&T hopped in and built us a custom app to interface with our voice over IPs. And then also built us an app to emulate our old 4-digit extension system that we had. And so it was the same great old extensions we had, but new hardware. And then as far as features goes, like I said, custom applications, and then pretty much anything in the App Store. We used to print paper tide books for all of our towers to fill out the tide boards, and now we just downloaded the Tides app, and now it's just on the phone. So minor cost savings here and there, but it's it's just one of the added features of having a smart device in each tower. And then tower moves are no problem anymore. During this last round of large swell that we had an emergency move just about every single one of our towers, and had we had to DC telephone lines and at every single one of those towers, we probably would have broken or lost a few of our towers this year, doing it in a hurry. So so far it's been super successful. And as far as devices themselves, if the device gets lost or stolen, we can track it. They're all have GPS, and they're all locked down by that MDM, or that mobile device management system. So we decide what apps are on it. We can find out where the phone's at, what's being done on it, and it's relatively secure. And if it gets stolen, we can replace the phone for $1, and it's back. A new phone will put that tower back in service in less than a day. And then for future development, the big thing here is that this iPhone, or this cell phone project, is now the platform where we can jump off into new projects. And so one of the apps that we have currently in development is a walkie-talkie, or like an intercom application. And so we can assign each one of those phones a group or an area or what have you, and kind of like a PA or an intercom in a building, we can PA out critical information. If we have a lightning event or a missing person or whatever, we can choose the group and send out the message, and it can wake the phone up and alert the lifeguard in the tower as to what's going on, or what any critical information they need. This is going to be a huge thing for statistics collection. We're going to get real-time stats that are geolocated. We could do things like beach attendance with pictures to help prove the amount of people there. We're looking at an app to help us with a PAR score at the end of the day. Those late summer evenings where it's dark at 8 o'clock when we're shutting our towers down, we can get good PAR at the end of the day and make sure everybody locked the door or made it back to the car potentially. And then just general surveys and checklists, which are huge. So if you can put it on a Google form, we can push that update to the phone and do vehicle checkout sheets or tower inventory sheets, you name it. And then looking even farther forward is eventually getting these phones integrated into our CAD system, and essentially having each phone act like a lifeguard unit or a fire engine, where they have a mobile data terminal where they can initiate tickets and have them just flow into the system quickly, and then they can alert their jurisdictional specialist or captain to their location. So yeah, the big idea here is from here on out, we're thinking really big. You got to think really big. Be able to know you're going to have to dial it back and manage those expectations of the people involved with the project and the personnel that are going to be those end users. Be ready to pivot and apply solutions where it makes sense. So the iPhone idea was this huge idea that we didn't think was possible, and we kind of dialed it back a little bit, and we were able to make the thing work. And earlier you saw the Emily remote control rescue boat. That was a big idea back in 2007. We've dialed it back since. It got us that yellow video ray submersible sub. We brought that submersible sub into our division, and it was kind of this weird thing that we weren't so sure about. And then we integrated it in with our dive team. We were able to recover a missing diver at 280 feet with our sub, and clip onto the person and pull them up to a depth where our divers could grab them. And so those small little successes and even early on failures potentially lead us to larger and bigger ways to innovate. And so we're moving on to bigger submersible subs to assist and augment our dive team and add value and bring additional resources to the residents of Los Angeles County. But yeah, so that's my presentation on tech and lifeguarding and where it makes sense and where we're looking to go in the future.
Amazing. Pono, thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's a fantastic case study of outside of the box thinking, like you said, thinking big, pivoting, not being afraid to fail. And I think all the lifeguards on the call will kind of resonate with that. But even the non-lifeguards and folks working in other space, I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from this, right? That the way that we've always done things may not be the best way in 2023. And so not being afraid to, dream a little bit and think how we can improve and innovate is something that all of us can take. I spent many years of my life digging phone trenches at Huntington State Beach. And so I can definitely appreciate where this is going. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'd really like to thank Ryan Elward, Sarah Kennedy, Melissa Miranda, and Pono for joining us today. Hopefully this has been an interesting and informative webinar for you. The recording from the webinar will be posted on the California Water Safety Coalition website a little bit later today. And I'm sure any of the speakers would welcome any further questions if you wanted to reach out. Thanks again. Have a great day, everybody.